Hi everyone, my name is Kristina Delforte, and today I will be presenting my senior capstone that focuses on virtual learning, asking the question of how can higher education create a more effective and interactive virtual learning experience. I would first like to introduce my capstone committee. I have Mary Golden as my thesis chair, and then my two committee members, Paige Pensgen and Candace Ganella. I really appreciate them taking the time to meet with me these past 2 semesters, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work with them. So here's just a quick table of contents of what I'll be going over today. Higher education is challenged to meet the current requirements for social distancing in educational spaces due to pandemic-related concerns from COVID-19. The goal of this capstone is to study the emerging spatial-related challenges and propose a solution to an efficient workspace in order to achieve an interactive, engaging, and successful online learning experience. Before the emergence of COVID-19, remote learning wasn't a common teaching practice in traditional higher education, except for online programs. In March 2020, virtual learning became more widespread. With students all over the world adjusting to this new way of learning, the challenges of this new way of face-to-face learning were revealed. In order to be successful, most students require a space that they feel motivated to learn and succeed in. Existing workspaces within higher education institutions are modifying to fulfill the demands that COVID brings. The space students learn in should create a feeling of excitement and encouragement within them. The creative agenda of this capstone will focus on creating a workspace where an active learning environment will be achieved while undergoing online learning. Moving on to my literature review. Classroom design and student engagement were critical to effective learning before the pandemic and continue to be as the globe works to control the spread of COVID. Moreover, student performance may be linked to specific design features of the educational system. For example, flexible seating, a modular room, movable tables, or multiple boards throughout the classroom all help generate a collaborative learning space. Attractive and comfortable environments promote active learning, and studies show that students are more willing to learn in an intriguing area. Innovative spaces promote active discussions, which lead to improved retention of information. These design strategies are used to create an active learning environment, which needs to be achieved both in the classroom and through virtual or distance learning. Active learning encourages students to share their thoughts and values and engage in a higher order of thinking. Bonwell and Eisen described active learning as students doing things and thinking about the things they're doing. Analysis and synthesis of the information is more meaningful than normal memorization. This kind of learning can be achieved through small group discussion, peer questioning, problem-based learning, or journal writing, which can all be done through virtual learning. The environment these activities are done in have the ability to alter the student's work ethic and dedication towards the class. To better understand how to design for the current modalities of learning in higher education, it's essential to review past environments in order to see the best solutions. Classroom design creates affordances, which are the perceived and actual properties of objects or environments that determine how the object or environment can be used. So take movable chairs, for example. They provide the opportunity and encourage for collaborative work and group discussion, and the specific affordance promotes engagement, forming a sense of classroom community. A study conducted by Barkley in 2010 focused on a traditional classroom layout with fixed seating and no technology, and to a flexible layout with added technology to enhance student learning. And here you can see the major differences between the two layouts. The findings of the study reveal that the more flexible outcome was favored. Many factors of the flexible option were desired. The adjustable seating erased the line between students and instructors, making the students feel respected and valued. The audiovisual tools were utilized to check the students' understanding. They wrote in their responses to questions on portable whiteboards, and being able to see that material presented in different ways through those audiovisual tools helped retain information. The technology used in the study is key to guide possible design solutions with current day teaching practices. The shift from in-person class to online learning was experienced by millions. Zoom was new, forcing everyone to adjust quickly. A survey released by Bayview Analytics offers insight into the transition. Instructors altered expectations for students and themselves, and assignments were changed and reduced. Expectations for workload and quality of work were lowered from what was acceptable in the past in typical in-person scenarios. The survey included 826 faculty members at 641 different colleges and universities, some of which were already fully online schools. 90% of these schools had some sort of emergency virtual education to complete the remaining of the spring term. One question in the survey asked the level of experience professors already had with remote teaching before March 2020, and results revealed that 50% of the institutions had some members with online teaching experience. 56% of the universities used new teaching methods in transitioning to remote learning. When institutions were asked to list the techniques, 83% utilized their institution's learning management system, 80% used synchronous video technology, 65% recorded their own lectures, and 51% used videos from third-party sources. So here is just a chart describing what assistance would be most helpful for faculty, and the top two responses were tied with information on how to best support remote students and webinars for students on how to succeed in online classes. They were both tied at 57%. And then another chart describing what assistance would be most helpful for institutions. And the two most popular answers were information on how to best support remote students, just like the last chart, and then greater access to online digital materials. So with this immediate shift to virtual learning, problems did occur. Video lectures became a normative replication of face-to-face interaction. Professor Susan Blum reported that there's a constant need to repair and apologize. If two people try and speak at the same time, it interrupts the signal, which doesn't happen in a normal classroom setting. Distance learning tools such as Zoom are platforms designed for a single speaker at a time. Interaction isn't just about the context or semantics, it's also pragmatic, meaning that it does things. Social connection builds trust and strong bonds. One's ability to learn is reliant on relationships built in the classroom. Blum stated, all the communicative signs that embodied humans rely on are thinned, flattened, made more effortful, or entirely impossible, yet we interpret them anyway. This statement poses the question of what can distance learning tools or students or professors do to boost this kind of interaction. One can see faces, eye movement, see gestures, hear voices, but it's still not the same as face-to-face communication. In normal classroom settings, one's able to see heads nodding in agreement or disagreement in one direction, which this doesn't happen as easily over Zoom or other platforms. Peers and instructors can't determine a student's reactions as easily as before. Right. Universities accommodated their spaces with what they already had, and many unable to bring in new equipment to fit new standards. Workstations were removed, relocated, or reduced by half to align with social distancing procedures. This asks the question that while the spaces meet the new standard of learning, are they adequately designed for success? Utilizing online learning might also require new aspects of design to produce the most effective and efficient space for one to work and learn through virtual learning. Spaces now lack the intrinsic human experience of working together, fostering creativity, innovation, and productivity. There needs to be a diverse range of spaces that give off warmth and energy while still considering the new safety concerns. Proximity, privacy, and posture need to be considered when designing for future spaces. Proximity will address the needs of social distancing. Privacy will deal with acoustical, visual, and territorial aspects of design, and these factors contribute to a sense of psychological comfort and safety. The range of postures can provide greater flexibility in creating more or less distance. The concept of workflow is another important factor to take into consideration. It's vital to student engagement and learning that environmental aspects be considered to reduce distraction that many students are facing. The goal is to attain flow, which can be defined as a state of intense absorption and involvement with the present moment. When someone's experiencing flow, they're completely immersed in what they're doing, fully concentrating and unaware of themselves. Students experience moments when they're in the zone and become deeply involved in what they're doing and sometimes even lose track of time. Some characteristics of flow include emerging action and awareness. Individuals feel like they're inside the activity or lesson, disregarding the fact that they're solely a listening observer. That outside perspective, when students realize what they're doing and are brought back to reality, destroys the flow. So if a student is deeply immersed in writing a paper, not aware of anything going on around him, and then suddenly his roommate walks in the room and starts talking, that distraction or outside perspective interrupts the flow that was happening, and the student loses focus and loses the workflow. Another characteristic is complete concentration on the task at hand. The individual is centering their attention on the activity of the moment. The concentration should be effortless with no mental strain. Flow also creates a lack of worry about losing control and allows for people to maintain good concentration and focus on the task. This focus allows them to feel as if they are in complete control over their actions. So moving on to the comparative analysis, Zoom was created in April of 2011, and recently we've seen a surge of users for academic and business resources because of COVID-19. Zoom provides similar functions as Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business, yet Zoom is the most used for remote learning. The different platforms have unique characteristics that will be discussed in the following comparative analysis. So first, Zoom. Zoom features video, audio conferencing, collaboration, chat, and webinar tools. And then Microsoft Teams. In Microsoft Teams, you can combine meetings. One's able to chat, call, and file share with the Office 365 feature. So the only major difference between the two platforms is Microsoft's integration between Teams and its Office 365 stack. The integration is referred to as a one-stop shop and allows for seamless collaboration, backups, and file search. Compared to Microsoft Teams, Zoom excels in terms of user interface. According to Unify Square, users rave over Zoom's simple interface and ability to navigate the program with little to no training. Microsoft Teams users are challenged by the non-beginner friendly interface. Users need to know how to interact with different channels, incorporate file sharing, and are proficient in the Office 365 applications. Microsoft Teams offers a broader range of tools and opportunities, making it valuable. When it comes to pricing, both platforms offer free versions. The free version of Zoom allows for people to hold meetings that can host up to 100 people. There are unlimited one-on-one meetings, online support, video and web conferencing features, group collaboration features, and security. In comparison, Microsoft Teams free version contains limited chat and collaboration, productivity apps and services, meetings and calls, and security. The free version of this platform is missing two important components, which are administration tools in Microsoft. So now discussing Skype for Business, formerly known as Microsoft Link Server. This platform is a unified communications platform that integrates common channels of business communication and online meetings. Skype for Business can be licensed as a standalone product or as part of the Office 365 application suite. Up to 250 people can be in a video conference at once compared to Zoom. And this platform also has enterprise level technical support. In comparing Zoom and Skype for Business, both platforms have different strengths. Zoom incorporates the use of breakout rooms and grants the meeting full control over the meeting. The host can mute all microphones and control user presentation access. Zoom users can virtually raise their hand and utilize the chat box. Skype for Business excels as an office communication solution with its instant messaging, screen document sharing, and informal audio-video calls. Skype for Business lacks breakout rooms and the ability to virtually raise a hand, but it does allow for effortless file sharing. Skype for Business is scheduled for its end of life, and the official date to end the platform is July 31st, 2021. And after that date, the service will no longer be accessible and users will have to migrate to Microsoft Teams or a different platform. So part of the research agenda included conducting a survey. The targeted survey demographic targeted college students that are currently participating in virtual learning. A series of questions were asked to gain knowledge on students' opinion of this experience. Students were asked about remote learning and compared to in-person classes, the location they chose to do their remote learning in, how successful they felt, and how to potentially optimize their remote learning experience. Each question received between 65 and 70 responses. The survey consisted of 7 questions, but I've included the most important 3, which tell me the 3 major considerations to include in the proposed solution of this capstone. So the first question asking, what about your classroom experience do you miss the most? And the main answer was collaboration and socialization, and even the other answers can fit into that category, like asking questions and the bond and relationship formed with the professor. The next question, how can your remote learning experience be optimized? 14 people answered with getting rid of unwanted distractions and also having more interactive activities over Zoom. The third question, how has your ability to focus been affected from the switch to remote and in-person classes? And pretty much everyone was unable to focus, or their focus has decreased from that learning in person. So these findings contributed to useful information concerning the opinion of college students on the topic of remote learning and how it can contribute to a possible design solution. Findings from the Capstone survey research indicate that the majority of students feel unsuccessful with virtual learning and would rather have in-person classes. When asked what was missed most about the classroom experience, socialization and collaboration were the two main points. Some students reported being alone all day due to remote learning, and socialization is a key factor in learning. It prepares people to participate in a social group by teaching them its norms and expectations. Without that in-person component, students are unable to experience the natural communications and collaborations that have happened in the past in in-person environments. A common response when asked how the remote learning experience could be optimized was by having limited distractions. It's far easier to get distracted in places such as a bedroom or dorm room than it is in a classroom. Students aren't used to learning from an unstructured setting. From the responses, the Capstone creative design solution is challenged to incorporate aspects of in-person elements like socialization, creating those bonds with classmates and professors, having limited distractions, and having certain features to keep students engaged with class. The intention of the creative solution is to design a spatial experience that considers these factors so the students will feel more successful in virtual learning. So moving on to my creative agenda, the proposed design solution takes symbolic inspiration from the seed, fostering growth, development, and creativity. Acoustical materials will be taken into consideration as well as material durability. The overall goal of this space will be to reduce unwanted distraction and serve as a welcoming place for students to take their classes in. Tackling first the need of limited distractions, a materials study was conducted on 4 acoustical materials, which are cork, acoustic panels, felt, and acoustic foam. Cork is a sound absorbing material and 3 millimeters can block up to 10 decibels of sound. Unlike a hard surface, a cork cells trap sound and diffuse it, and it can also stop echoes. It prevents sound and vibration transmission. When cork is used, the sound level of noise is reduced. Impacts on the surface create unwanted noise, and cork allows those noises to be reduced. It can act as a durable acoustic insulation, reducing sound from adjoining rooms. Cork is also a natural fire retardant. It originates from trees and is sustainably harvested. Trees aren't chopped down and the bark is solely utilized. And then in addition, cork can be recycled at the end of life. Acoustic panels control the sound quality of different spaces. It's essential to differentiate between absorption and diffusion. Absorption reduces noise levels by absorbing sound energy, and diffusion makes the room sound lively without creating echoes. Diffusers disperse sound uniformly within the space without removing sound energy. Felt has sound insulating properties and can aid in reducing noise and pollutants in the room. It comes in a wide range of shapes, sizes, and colors. It also prevents sound and noise reverberation, which is the leading source of dissatisfaction in offices. Acoustic foam is also a sound absorbing material that prevents noise reverberation. The foam can be cut in a way to manipulate vibrations and improve quality, and it's also a cost-effective material. Overhead UV lighting fends off infectious diseases. Energetic waves of UV light are delivered in the right dose to wipe out viruses, bacteria, and other microorganisms. It can already effectively wipe out airborne microbes that transmit measles, tuberculosis, and another strain of COVID, which is closely related to COVID-19. This type of lighting is currently being used on public transit surfaces, hospitals, and in disinfecting N95 masks for reuse. The type of UV being used is UVC radiation, which is a disinfectant for air, water, and surfaces that can help mitigate the risk of getting an infection. The cons to this lighting is the cost and cleaning time. It normally takes around 30 minutes to clean a space, so students would have to wait until the pod is done being cleaned to begin using it. With today's current cleaning protocols, it was important to consider safe alternatives to UV light. Electrostatic sprayers uniformly apply disinfectant to all surfaces. These are normally surfaces that can be easily missed or are hard for cleaners to properly clean. They can protect a surface for up to 90 days and act as a disinfectant, deodorizer, and cleaner all in one. The UV light sanitizing wand can be used by waving the wand a few inches over the surface one would want to disinfect. It kills germs without the use of harsh chemicals or cleaner. And then the Brun 36 disinfecting lamp. This lamp is 18 inches tall and is 99.9% effective in killing germs and bacteria. It's capable of disinfecting up to 500 square feet and has a 360-degree range. The UV Clean sanitizer bag can disinfect devices like cell phones, which are covered in germs. It eliminates viruses 10 times faster than normal wipes alone and can fully sanitize in less than 60 seconds. Okay, so here are my initial sketches of what I wanted the space to be. And looking at these sketches now, it took a more traditional shape mimicking the private office pod, but my solution ended up taking a more unconventional shape. So like I said before, the pod takes inspiration from a seed that symbolizes growth, development, and creativity. And the metaphorical intent is that students will be able to grow and expand their knowledge. The study seed will be a workspace for students to come and take their classes and do schoolwork. The proposed design solution is constructed with materials of high acoustic properties in order to block out unwanted distractions and noise. A sit-to-stand table will be utilized through a panel, and that will be connected to the skeleton of the space. And the sit-to-stand table will operate according to an air compressed system, which moves along the panel. Students can plug their laptop into a monitor located above the workspace, which will improve the view of their classes on the screen. A surround sound system becomes the bridge between in-person and virtual classes. From the floor plan, it's 13.5 feet wide, and I did reference existing private office pods to get accurate dimensions of the space. So these are the final materials I chose for the space. Felt's cost effective, has many acoustical properties, and comes in a lot of different colors and patterns. I chose Knoll's Fizz Felt in the pattern Rain. To me, it abstractly resembles a pattern of the exterior of a seed. And the tables are a high pressure laminate, making it easy to clean when a student's done using the space. The floor is a vinyl tile with a foam backing, which also contributes to noise reduction. So here is an exploded axonometric of the pod and how it would fit together. First, the skeleton would be constructed, and then the doorway, and then on top of that, the shell would be placed and locked in, so it would be able to stand. And then the sit-to-stand table would have to be constructed inside the space, so that would come apart separately. Right, here's a section drawing of the interior of the pod. With dimensioning, it is universally designed. Someone in a wheelchair could easily come in and use the space and be able to manipulate the table to the preferred height. Here's an exterior of the study seed. So when the pod's in use, there are LED strip lighting placed on top of the skeleton. So when the pod's in use, those would illuminate and let other students know that it's being used, so they wouldn't have to awkwardly look into the space to tell. They'd be able to tell that it's being occupied from a good distance away. And it's also an unconventional shape, so it would definitely catch the eyes of students and make them want to come in and use it. Here's an interior rendering of the space. In this rendering, the sit-to-stand table is being used and the student is currently in a Zoom class. The floors and the ceiling are also illuminated. And it's also an attractive and an exciting environment that students would be invited to learn in. And then the sit-to-stand table, only the end pieces would need to move. That one piece would move the rest, so it can easily be manipulated. And that's all. Thank you. And if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them.
Thanks, Kristina. Josh, we'll open the floor to you first, and then we can open the floor following immediately to the other committee members too.
Okay, great. Well, first, Kristina, thank you very much for a very thorough presentation. It's really engaging, obviously very timely. I think that, you know, all of us in both teaching and even in practice, we're struggling with this exact issue and kind of, you know, where we head as far as next steps in our you know, re-engagement in the both academic and professional world. I think there are a lot of really kind of larger questions that loom in relationship to that. I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. Maybe you can give me a little bit more insight into the thinking, and I'm gonna focus primarily on the design, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because at least for me, you know, I'm most interested in all the research is fantastic, but I'm most interested in how it translated into the design and then kind of where the design could head. Because obviously any design that we're kind of putting out there at this point right now speculates on, you know, what we know now about the pandemic. But unfortunately, in the arc of this kind of pandemic, we probably know about we don't know nearly as much as we probably think we know, right? Like, so everything's going to be a kind of a work in process. But when I was looking at your design, some of the things that, you know, immediately I was curious about, when a student is in that pod, are you anticipating that this is housed in a kind of a much larger space where there would be an array of these pods in a kind of a larger field?
Yeah, I was imagining them being placed in buildings on college campuses.
Okay, so within existing spaces, right? Okay. And so when students arrive to these spaces, would they arrive, like, would these actual locations actually have a home or a place, or would you could arrive at campus and you could basically dock into your classroom from any point, or would they actually have a location? In other words, are they location specific other than being at the university?
They're not location specific. They can go pretty much anywhere.
Okay. Okay. No, so that's then I guess the next question is, you know, you're talking about the kind of idea of a seed, right? And the idea, you know, if you're using that metaphor, seed is the beginning stage of something that grows. And in your mind, the kind of metaphor, I guess, is working at the level of the seed. The person is the seed, and the capsule that's in there is the kind of original version of the form. In your mind, the idea of growth happens through the actual attainment of information, right? That's how it's working as a kind of network. Okay. What did you think about the way that the actual pods themselves might actually be kind of more of a network than a kind of isolated individual piece?
I haven't thought much about that. More than one person could use the pod, or like they could use it together. So I guess that aspect would be networking, but I haven't thought about how they could go together to create something more like that.
Yeah, because it might be interesting to kind of look at, you know, you know, and I say this, I realize you're kind of at a moment of kind of completion of the project, right? So, but I always, every project, you always want to think about, you know, what it could be, and as you develop your portfolio, but thinking about it as a network, as part of a kind of a larger system. And, you know, I think this goes to any type of office furnishing systems, they're usually a part of a kind of a larger landscape of furnishings, right? And so I think that thinking about how that node might become part of a larger network and how the network comes together and how that could evolve with our kind of changing understanding of, in this case, the virus, or even learning, right? That I'm assuming, there will be, it's kind of interesting because Zoom came very early in the pandemic, and it hit a sort of stasis point, right? Like at a certain point, it just became the de facto mode of engaging with schoolwork. And aside from like adding Snapchat filters or something ridiculous like that, it really kind of hit a stasis very early in the pandemic, which is kind of interesting. But I'm assuming, depending on how long this goes, the modalities by which we engage even Zoom, and you did some of that research as well, I think it will evolve too. And I think that there would be, I guess, it would be interesting to think about how those modalities evolve, how your pod might actually have the ability to kind of, in the same way a seed does, branch out to change, or maybe that rather, and you built it as a kind of a kit of parts in an interesting way. I liked your exploded axonometric where you're showing the parts. I mean, it might even be as simple as, you could remove one section of the piece and create a new piece, right? That becomes the bridge of the network, right? Where two students could, two students could actually merge their pods together, right? Or the geometry affords itself to be kind of multivalent and actually connect and create bigger pieces. I think it would be really interesting. I think there are lots of sort of interesting historical precedents, like the Bureau Landschaft. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a kind of 1950s office planning kind of theory that, it's kind of in the vein of a sort of more less structured, more kind of organic approach to office layouts. And I think we see that in kind of more contemporary ideas of office and academic spaces, like Jun Ishigami's Kanagawa Institute might be something interesting. It's just a way to kind of think about, I guess, the actual form of your project in ways that it could kind of spread out. And I think there's all kinds of ideas about kind of networks that might really be relatable to what you're looking at. Let's see. How do you think in your project, the notion you brought up, the sort of this single speaker problem? I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think that is one of the biggest problems. I mean, I like the fact that you brought up the main thing that we're all missing in this kind of, even in this environment, right, is the socialization aspect, and actually the ability to, I think it's the tangential information that you pick up from body language of people, or being in the same room, or in this case with this review, not being able to see Candace's and Mary's face, or Lisa's face, and Taylor's face, and actually just reading their reading of our conversation. Obviously there's an incredible amount of information that's transferred that way, and it also comes down to this notion of affording a certain amount of comfort that like students have when they're engaging one another, and willingness to share information. I think that that's like, when you're thinking about those environments, the willingness to share information is, I think, one of the big walls that this kind of new mode of learning really suffers from. And so I guess in thinking about your project, you've obviously created a super comfortable, like ergonomically very kind of specific and well thought out space. And, it's, as you said, it's very attractive on the inside. It would be a nice space to inhabit. And I know I'm asking you a question that's something that's like very hard to do, but did you think about the way that the kind of interface might afford itself, or actually have some sort of ability to create the more of an atmosphere that would allow for kind of the more casual exchanges that happen?
I think the idea that more than one person can be in the pod would help that, but I think a lot of it would have to be probably Zoom, like fixing or like improving their program and allowing for more than one person to speak at a time. Maybe being in a structured setting would encourage a student to be more willing to share and sharing like body language more, so it's more easy to tell, but that's all I have.
Okay. No, I think that's interesting. And I think that some of your research, I thought, was, at least to me, it gave me some ideas about that. Because one of the things in my courses, I teach design studios, and I also teach a course in representation. And one of the things that we experimented with over the course of the semester, we're trying to find kind of virtual acoustic environments that more lent themselves to the informality of being in a room together. And one of the things we experimented with a number of virtual reality software that allowed and recreated the acoustics of being within spaces together. And one is actually an online thing that you can download. It's called Hubs by Mozilla. And it actually has spatial acoustics. And I was actually thinking about your project insofar as like when you're talking with somebody, there's actually a virtual reality room that's everyone's in, and you can navigate your avatar around the room. And so that when you're talking, you're hearing the person that your avatar is closest to. And I was thinking about it as it relates to your pod, is that it would be kind of interesting if the interface had that kind of virtual reality of a kind of, let's say, a virtual room. People could maneuver around that space. And because you have such good acoustics in your space and we're so thoughtful about the acoustics, it would really lend itself if like you embedded certain speakers in strategic locations that you could create the kind of atmosphere of a kind of acoustic location within the space, which might be kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So, as far as the actual structure, I mean, I love the idea of felt as a material. I think that. Well, I wanted to ask you about the oculus at the top. Is that oculus at the top? Was that glass?
Yeah, it's glass and is also used for the ventilation of the space.
Okay, great. So you were thinking about airflow and moving.
Yeah, and just to allow for some natural light too.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, one of the things I like about felt when you were talking about it is felt, to me, in my experience in using it as an architect, I worked, one of the projects I worked on was the Juilliard School of Music. And so we did a lot with acoustics. And one of the things I thought was really interesting about felt is once it kind of hits a certain critical mass in a room, really starts to affect the acoustics in a way that it really becomes something that you feel the presence of. And I like the idea of this kind of cocoon space that you've created. If it was clad, for instance, entirely in felt, it really, it creates almost a kind of deafening silence. It's like, it's something that you experience. And there's a sculptor by the name of Joseph Beuys who did a lot of sculptures in all felt. And so he made these gigantic sculptures that you can walk within, and they're completely, your body is wrapped in felt, and it's kind of interesting. You really feel it's beyond acoustics. It changes the environment. And so I thought as a kind of totalizing environment like you created, that idea of that as a material is a really interesting one.
Thanks.
Okay, how are we doing on time, Mary?
We're doing just fine on time.
Okay.
So you can continue to question or offer comment, and Candace, you can also join in when Josh is completed. So go right ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I did other things I admired about the project. I mean, I liked the idea of the lighting and the kind of occupancy sensor, and that gets into the kind of idea I was talking about, like almost a kind of an intelligence to this thing, right? That it would be, multiple things within a space, and that you would actually, kind of know. And I think that would be something that you could even develop even more, like kind of the understanding that it wouldn't be just so isolating, right? That there might be some recognition that, you know, when people are in there and the light starts to do that. And I think that's a really interesting idea. It's like at one moment creating the separation that's required, but at least, you know, one of the things that's kind of important in this kind of mode of existence is like understanding that other people are out there. You know, it's just like the level of isolation is so intense, and at some points that just even understanding that you're, you know, close to other people is important. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, in looking at the kind of the arc of your project and the totality of it, I really, really loved the research and the fact that there was so much of it. The one I did feel like that there's some of the research ended and it didn't kind of manifest itself into the project. And there was like a lot of like, you know, when you're looking at the difference between Teams and Zoom and Skype. And I think that, you know, it's really important in research to kind of obviously come at it from an objective point of view and to look at what's in front of you. But when you're giving a presentation and so forth, you want to really try to guide the research. It's almost like at least for me, going back and editing your research to tune it to the project a little bit, because I feel like there was such emphasis on that aspect of the project, but then the actual interior design or the architecture that you created didn't really as much take those pieces of information into consideration, right? And so I guess in kind of weighting your presentation, you know, at least for me, I always try to figure out, you know, the arc of my narrative and then reverse engineer, like what pieces do I want to spend the most time on talking about? And I think in your case, there's such a kind of interesting kit of parts there that, and I don't obviously understand the whole structure of your semester and how it works, but I was really curious about the kind of the kit of parts and the structuring. And I would have loved to kind of understand the metrics and the research that went into that a little bit more as a kind of the total understanding of your project. So. Yeah. So what's the next, so is this the end of the semester and then you're completed?
Yeah,
Okay.
this is the final presentation and then we're all done.
Okay. So are you planning to make a mock-up of your project?
I was thinking about it when I was talking with Mary, I think a couple months ago. But just because of time, I ended up not doing it. But maybe in the future, just to add that in to the presentation and to include in my portfolio to help better understand the space, I think it would definitely be useful.
Yeah, I bring it up because, you know, with my teaching, the one thing that I felt like this last year that has really been missing, that I think is a really important part of the tools that we as designers use is the kind of the model, the handmade model, the mock-up is a way to test ideas and kind of the feedback loop you get from the actually making a scale version of it. And even just thinking about the kind of, you know, the idea of this being a multivalent system or how it relates to the other ones, making a scale model would be, I think, a fun thing to do. And I think it would allow you to kind of think about it that way. And it's also, you know, from a purely pragmatic or professional point of view, you know, as somebody who's looked at lots of portfolios, you know, and hiring and so forth, like having a well-versed range of skills, like your renderings are very nice and your drawings and your research is very nice, but, you know, the ability to kind of to express yourself and your ideas in physical models and testing ideas through physical model making, I think is really important. So I would encourage you to do it. I know it's, you know, it hasn't been very conducive, and it's one of the things I think in a design education that is really right now been the biggest challenge. So.
Thank you, Josh. Candace and Paige, would you also like to give a few comments? We have about 5 minutes for each of you, please.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Kristina, that was very well organized. I'm really impressed how your final presentation turned out. It's been a pleasure watching this project go from the beginning stages all the way to here. And I know you're very pleased with this as well, but I just wanted to say again how wonderful it was to see your pod shape actually transform, because it was, like you were saying, metaphorical almost, the intent of growing. And as your project was growing, your your actual shape was metaphorical in the growing learning sense as well. I thought you had really great attention to details, especially the sound systems and of course the materials and the UV cleaning lights. I thought those were all very important details. And even the pressure powered sit to stand monitor solution that you came up with was very clever. I liked how you also included an exterior rendering of the space. I think that really helped visualize what it would actually look like. You had a lot of very interesting research that pointed back to your design solution. You did a great job at taking all of your research and then figuring out what the problem was, and from that problem finding solutions in your design solution. I liked when you mentioned proximity, privacy, and posture that were all variables in your design solution, and they were very clearly stated in your research, and I think translated well into your final product. I definitely agree with Josh that having a 3D model could be really beneficial, especially since this is your last year at RIT. You might want to take the time, I know you probably don't have time, but take time to use some of the tools that RIT has, like the 3D printers or the laser cutters, to maybe figure out that framing system. That'd be really, really cool if that all came together. And another thing that Josh said that really got me thinking was the VR incorporation into your project. I think that could really be a continuation of the project in general. I think there's a lot to be done there, and I think that's really innovative and new, and that could be really exciting. If you were to revisit this project one day, think about that. But overall, I think you did a really great job. I did have one question about the door in your space. Did you have what was your thought process behind that?
So I didn't want the door to intrude on the space and take up like any square footage into that. So I just made it go out rather than in.
Do you have a thought about the material? Did you end up using glass for the door?
Yeah, the door was glass. Okay. So you're able to see into the space.
Do you think that would be a problem with distractions, or the way that's arranged might not be?
I don't think it would be that much of a problem, because there's still like a little bit of passageway past the door. And I think having it be glass would kind of, it would make the student feel less isolated in the space. So they would still be able to see, if they were to turn around, what's going on around them just a little bit, but I don't think it would be too distracting.
That was a great answer. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Kristina.
Hi.
I also want to echo Paige's comments. I am so proud that I was able to, be a part of this. I'm so happy that you requested that I be a part of this and watched you on this journey. You have come so far in all of this. And I definitely want to echo the congratulations that you received from Paige on that. A couple of comments that I had that as you were giving this presentation kind of dawned on me. Watching you in this process, I definitely can see the very stringent traditional design that was going on while you were collecting all of your information for your thesis. And as you were trying to do that research, and it almost kind of echoes that as you were doing the research, it was almost there wasn't a ton of like active creativity or going outside of that box, because you were looking at the facts and you were trying to instantly give a very straightforward answer to them. And I think that observing you as you continued in this process, as you reached the end of your thesis, and it really all the information was there, and you were really just going back and forth on, you know, grammar and how you were going to organize it, that's when your pod really came to life. And the design just like rocketed. It would just started, and you had all these different ideas. I mean, I think it was like a span of 2 weeks. Paige and I saw your design, and the next time we came in, it was completely different. And that is completely okay, because I think that in those 2 weeks, there was so much growth in that. And I think that you definitely learned and realized that with design, there really is no end. It's never going to be perfect. There's always things that you can add onto it to make it work better in the future. And in this scenario, that's even more true, because this is a changing world. You know, you have a lot of technology that you're trying to incorporate into this space, and technology changes every day. So I really loved Josh's comment about trying to maybe make this into that kit of parts. You already have it started, that if you do have those kits of parts, it can be easily adapted to the future. And I think that that's something that's very unique, that as you're progressing, you're trying to put together your portfolio, if you can add some of that in there, and then even if you can try and show that in a 3D actual physical model, that would be so beneficial for you as you start interviewing at places. That would be so unique. Yeah, I think it would be a very, very good idea to try and do something like that.
Yeah.
Other comments I had, I do like the way that you organized your presentation. I think that, again, based on that comment I had of, as you got farther away from the finding of your facts and research, the design started to come together. I think that even with just like a little bit more time, you probably could have checked all of those boxes of any of the information that might have felt as if it was falling short. You're like so close in most of those areas. But I think that honestly, you created a very unique, very real world application. It's something that people need and would definitely consider using right now. So that being said, congratulations. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. And I look forward to seeing what you do in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments, Josh, that you have?
No, I just want to say congratulations. Excellent project.
Thank you.
Great job, Kristina, and congratulations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so I would also like to extend a sincere thank you on behalf of RIT's Interior Design Program to Josh and to our committee members, Paige and Candace, for their valuable feedback. So we're indebted to all of you for your thoughtful cross-examination of the students' work. And I would also like to thank and recognize Lisa for helping behind the scenes as our moderator. And we would, of course, like to thank our audience for your attention and support. So the committee and the examining scholar will now enter the breakout room for deliberations, and this completes the final oral defense for Kristina. You're all welcome to stay on for the next presentation, and thank you for attending. Have a great afternoon.